Hello, my name is Dalton Allison, and I am a principal here at XCentium, and I would like to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. Today's topic of conversation will be personalization. In a minute, I will be handing it over to our host, Dave Stawinski, who is our Vice President, Digital Delivery here at XCentium, Brett Franklin, who is our Director of UX, and Meng Hak, who is a Lead Architect. In this webinar, we will be showing you how you can increase the relevancy of content and the experience on your digital properties with personalization, as well as an overview of Sitecore CDP and Personalize. We are expecting this webinar to be about 30 minutes in duration, including time for question and answers. The content will be recorded and made available later for on-demand viewing, so you may share it with your colleagues. As mentioned, there will be time for questions at the end, so please feel free to enter them using the GoToWebinar interface. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, Dalton. And I would just like to thank everyone for being with us today. And if you're viewing this time shifted on YouTube, maybe you could give us a like and a subscribe. That would be great. If you aren't familiar with XCentium, just going to take a couple of minutes to give kind of a rundown on who we are and what we do. We are a full-service digital consultancy. We build all sorts of business software and websites for our clients, but we kind of break it down into three buckets, as you can see here. Just digital, where our strategic and creative and brand and UX and CX thinking happens. Platforms, which is all across different platforms that we work with. Primarily today we're going to be talking about Sitecore, but we do work with Salesforce, we do work with Opti and various others as well. And of course, our managed services, which encompasses all of our cloud offering, including hosting, managed services, ongoing maintenance of software and websites, and assessments, which we are going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Oh, and I should also mention there will be time at the end for questions. So please start thinking of questions along the way. Some of our clients, we're obviously very proud to be associated with a lot of these wonderful brands, wonderful people. Many, many years and a lot of thinking and delivery have gone into these relationships, and they're incredibly grateful for that. If you don't see a brand that lives inside of your vertical, this is just a representation of a few of our favorites, but we have many, many verticals that we are active in. So please get in contact with us, and we can discuss your needs as well. And with that, we're going to get into the reason that everyone came here today, and I'm going to hand it over to Brett Franklin, my friend and colleague, to tell you all about one-to-one personalization. So please, Brett, take it away.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. So let's talk at a high level about what we're going to go through today. So one-to-one personalization. The first thing that we're going to look at is what it is. We're then going to talk about when and where to do it. And then 3, we'll get a little bit more hands-on and talk about how to do it. Next. So let's start off with the first point there. What is personalization? Next. So personalization, if you take it into the real world for an offline example, it's kind of like being at your favorite cafe and walking in and having the barista there say, "The regular today?" In other words, it's all about being known. And why this is so important for an online experience is that it establishes brand loyalty, it encourages repeat visits, it gives you good social currency, and most importantly, it reduces barriers to conversion. So our ultimate goal here is, how do we get this in a web or online experience? Next. So that said, that was a very brief overview of what personalization is. Let's talk about when and where to do it. Next. Okay, so here we have the when and where, and on the right we have kind of a normal marketing conversion funnel. So who are we targeting, or who do we want to personalize for? The short answer is is that we want both visitors and repeat customers. In other words, both of those customer types are eligible for personalization. And where can we personalize on their journeys? Well, the short answer is at multiple points. So we can target both types of users, multiple points on their journeys, and also it's important to note that personalization can happen incrementally as well as progressively. We can get more and more personalized as we go through the conversion funnel and marketing funnel that we show there on the right. Next. Okay, so let's get into brass tacks here and talk about exactly when and where. Now, I'm going to be talking about a website right now, but this is something that goes for all types of properties, and we'll get into Omnichannel in just a few minutes. But as far as a website goes, where do we personalize? So first, we personalize pages. So we personalize at the page level. And then we also personalize at the component level. So there's these two types of personalization, at least in this regard, that work in tandem together. Next. So let's talk specifically about what types of pages before we get into components, which we'll talk in about just a minute. Let's talk about pages for a second. So we can personalize pages, and this is just an example of some of the candidates for personalization. Things like the home, landing, product listing page, product detail page, the carts, checkouts, and confirmation. And those are all kind of pretty obvious examples, but some pages that some clients often overlook are the facts pages, the support page, et cetera, et cetera. And specifically about the facts and the support pages, we can personalize those because we're finding that users are coming back to certain pages that have already purchased from the e-commerce vendor, and they need specific facts and support. And so we take that as an opportunity to personalize the page for them when they return to the site. Next. So let's talk about PDP specifically, or the product detail page. Next. So an interesting statistic is that, and this is the source of this is the Weimar Institute, is that only 8% of merchants currently are personalizing the product detail page. Now, the reason why this is important, and it's a big lost opportunity, is that on the product detail page, we're finding that people or users that have purchased an item often come back to the PDP. They return for support. In other words, if they bought something and they need to figure out how to put it together, they will often come back to the PDP. And it's here that we have the opportunity to cross-sell to them. We can try to sell kits, bundles, in other words, products that go well with the product that they've already purchased. So we definitely have opportunities for personalization on the PDP. Again, the top statistic is really saying that this is a really big missed opportunity for many merchants. And then the final thing I'll say about PDP is that personalizing this page really gives the consumer the "you are here" factor. In other words, we recognize you, good to see you again, and we're going to support you now that you're back to continue your journey with us. Next. So components. This is really just a partial list of components because there are so many places that one can personalize components within a page. But an important part or important component that is often overlooked is the global navigation. And by that I mean menus, things like navidizing, in other words, navigational merchandising. We can actually personalize those menus to fit our target or the personalization demographic that we're working with, to put things that that user we've discovered finds more interesting. We can rearrange menus so that they appear first in the menu or at different parts in the experience. We can also personalize search, and that's both how the user searches and the results that we give to them for search. We can personalize content modules and snackables, in other words, things that can be personalized that interest our user and that can then be propagated throughout the site as components. So global content modules and global snackables. Next. And I did mention earlier that I was speaking just about websites, but it is important to note that personalization can and should function in an omni-channel method. So what we're talking about here is that if we're online, we're personalizing the website, the complementary app, and all of the social functions for that property, as well as offline. So when the user is in store, at the point of sale, the kiosk, et cetera, et cetera. So there are definitely many, many ways that one can and should personalize across all their properties. And next. So this is just a very high-level example of a website personalization that we did for an end user that is a doctor. So one of the personas, and I'll just walk through this diagram at a high level here, but one of the personas for this doctor system that we implemented was an early career doctor. And so what we did then was identified the needs for that persona, for that doctor. And this is only a partial list, but one of the needs was training. Another need, for example, was certification, and then a third need was community. So what we did was, for that first need, for training, we identified what strategy we would use to accomplish that need or to fulfill that need. And in this case, it was promotions. So we've determined up to this point that via personalization, we are going to feed promotions to an early career doctor to support their training needs. And then as the tactic, the hands-on logistics of that strategy, we're going to be feeding them educational and certification programs, as well as cross-selling them on other complementary products that would help them in their training in their early career. So this is just an example of how we kind of go through and map out personas to make sure that personalization is functioning properly. Next. So I've talked a lot about the concepts of personalization, when and where we do it, kind of at a high level. And now is the third part of our agenda today. What we're going to do is talk about how to do personalization. And so my colleague Meng is going to explain to us how personalization can be attained, as well as how XCentium can make sure personalization functions properly for you and helps your KPIs. So with that, Meng, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Brett. So like he mentioned, today I'll be talking about how to create a one-to-one personalization. Before I get into that, though, I'd like us to first consider the experience on an omni-channel basis rather than just a single channel. What's omni-channel? Imagine while you're waiting in line at the bank, you're browsing for some clothes to purchase in a mobile app. But before you can add to the cart, you're called to the teller. Wouldn't it be neat that when you get home and visit the clothing company's website on your computer, that you can continue right where you left off? That's the goal that we're trying to achieve with omnichannel. Omnichannel is a buzzword that's thrown around a lot, but often the implementation are multi-channel instead of omni-channel. The subtle difference here is that with multi-channel, you may have multiple experiences, but those experiences do not work together. And the reason for that is usually because of data silos. So you have your analytics in Google Analytics, your CRM data in Salesforce, and your order history data in an APOS system. So all of these data are siloed and are not aware of each other. Next. So how do we have all of these data work together? We utilize something called a customer data platform. A CDP is a piece of software that combines data from multiple places to create a single centralized repository. So the CDP consumes all of your order data, your device data, etc. And then all of your various channels in turn communicates with the CDP to create your unique one-to-one experience. Next. So now that we know what a CDP is, let's take a look into Sitecore CDP and Sitecore Personalize. So Sitecore CDP and Sitecore Personalize is a SaaS offering. They're two separate products. The CDP, which is the customer data platform, and the Personalize. This is where you build your one-to-one experience. So it's a SaaS offering. Maintaining the infrastructure, upgrades, etc. You don't have to worry about. You just use the software. There's little to no coding required. Some of us may notice, why does Sitecore have Personalize when they already have Sitecore XP, which can also do personalization? And the reason for that is because they realize that businesses must be able to respond quickly to consumer demands. So investing in huge monolithic implementation is no longer viable. Their focus is on this mock architecture. It's a relatively new term in the industry. It stands for microservices. Software are small and hyper-focused. API first. So all of your functionality is exposed through APIs. Thirdly, again, it's SaaS, cloud-native SaaS. You don't need to worry about upgrades and maintenance. Lastly, it's headless. So your front-end experience is completely decoupled from the back-end. So technically, you don't need something like Sitecore CMS to use Sitecore CDP, Sitecore Personalize. A static website or even something like Wix, you can use that with Sitecore CDP and Personalize. So the direction that Sitecore is going with is this composable architecture, where you can quickly add, remove, and interchange software. You are not tied to a particular technology. Next. So let's see how CDP and Personalize interact. Over on the left, we have all of these various data streams that's being consumed by the CDP. Then we have these other three items. This is where Sitecore Personalize comes in. You have the experimentation. This is where you can do your A/B testing. The second item is decisioning. So you have the ability to create business logic in Sitecore Personalize without coding. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on with decisioning. Lastly, you're able to create your omni-channel experience through Sitecore Personalize. With these experiences, they're also A/B testable. Next. So how do we create an experience? The first of which is called the web experience. So this is when you add a snippet into your website, and then do some configuration on Sitecore Personalize. So you can set the background color, some text, and then Sitecore Personalize through the JavaScript library will dynamically load your content into your website. This is useful for past iterations. There's no coding involved, you just do the configuration and the JavaScript loads your content. Next. Next. The second way to create an experience is the interactive experience. So sometimes you may want to have further control over your of your content. You want to control your CSS, for example, or you want your mobile app to do the rendering logic. In this case, you would utilize the interactive experience. So this is where you build your API through Sitecore Personalize. No coding involved again. You use something called a free marker syntax, which builds the API in a JSON format. Once your API is built, then, like I mentioned, your app or your website can consume the data. With this interactive experience, you can set it as a triggered experience. So based on some event, so for example, if the user has abandoned a cart, you can set a trigger to say, send an email out and say, hey, we have this offer, would you like to continue and actually check out? Next. Once you have built your experiences, so this is where you can get into the personalization and the one-to-one. You can target these experiences. The first of which is page targeting. What page would you like your experience to show up in? If you don't set a page targeting, it shows up on all pages. The second portion is targeting the audience. So who would you like to see this experience? Say, for example, for certain content, you only want premium members to be able to view. So this is where you target the audience. Thirdly is decisioning. This is where you can build your business logic through no coding at all, and offer some sort of promotion to the user. Lastly, we have goals. So this is useful for A/B testing. Next. So this is how we build business logic via decisioning. Again, no coding involved. Over on the left side, it looks like just like a few diagrams here, but this is literally how you build your business logic. So you would drag and drop input data such as the guest data, drag in your products, and then drag in offers and connect them to this sort of decision table. It's a literal decision table. So the example here is for all guests who lives in Los Angeles, you get this Meng's offer or this 10% off of this product. Next. So the last item I'm going to talk about is A/B testing. So this is how you perform A/B testing. With A/B tests, you should have some sort of hypothesis and some sort of goal in mind. So the hypothesis here is, I believe that adding an email capture bar will increase my conversion rate by 1%. So the goal is, conversion rate, increasing the conversion rate by 1%. So before you can test this hypothesis, you need some sort of base analysis. So what's my current conversion rate right now? The example here is 10% of my visitors will make a purchase. So that's the base rate. The second item deals with noise in the experiment. So we're saying it's a relative difference here. So if users have increased my conversion by say 12%, so 20% of 10% is 12%. So if it only increase the conversion rate by another 2%, so another 20%, we can consider that as it's just noise. The third item is the confidence level. That just means how repeatable this A/B test is. And lastly, Sitecore Personalize will give you the required sample size. So how many visitors is needed to determine that this A/B test has passed. So once you've set all of your input data there, over on the right side, we set the various experience. So the first experience is the original without an email capture bar. I'm setting the traffic here to 50%. The second variant is adding the email capture bar. Again, that's 50% of the traffic as well. So once you've set that, you can run the experiment and see if it increases your conversion rate by 1%. So that concludes on how to create a one-to-one personalization. Over back to you, Dave.
Oh, thank you, Meng. So, depending on the sort of level of digital maturity of your org, this may have been all new to you, or there may have been, some news and some things that you understand well. But we definitely want to make sure that we leave you with an understanding of how you can engage with us to continue the conversation, so that we can maybe collaborate on solving your specific needs. We have a couple of different ways of initially engaging with us, and I've got a couple of slides here about that. The first one I want to talk about is a customer experience assessment. Now, this is specifically targeted to the things that you've seen today, but many others as well. It's a comprehensive review of your omni-channel strategy, including your content strategy. We look at your user behavior. We want to make sure that you're accessible for compliance and inclusivity reasons. And of course, a creative, all aspects of how you're coming in front of your customers. And we publish a comprehensive deliverable that helps you prioritize our findings and possible remediations. Now, of course, personalization and readiness for personalization is part of that. For some of you, you may be familiar with the concept of digital maturity. This is more or less mapped to that, but it's meant to be highly specific, so actionable, not just a kind of abstract. And you can imagine how for those of you who have have lots of channels for your content and lots of channels as part of your digital strategy, you can imagine how comprehensive that could be. The second one is specific to Sitecore, and it's a solution assessment. So this is essentially looking under the hood of your solution, making sure that you are modernized enough to take advantage of the things that the customer assessment would point to. But it's not necessarily coupled with a customer experience assessment. You can do a Sitecore. So for the classic example is, well, we have a Sitecore website that's not performing well that someone built for us. Can you help us? The very first thing that we would usually recommend is a solution assessment, because we want to take a comprehensive look at why you may be having those challenges. But there are a host of reasons why you might be. It could be about digital maturity and readiness for things that are on your roadmap. It could be about resolving pain points. It could be because, you just had something built, and for whatever reason, the partnership is ending with the party that built it. And so you want to make sure you understand very completely and comprehensively what you own. There could be a lot of different reasons for that. The two of these, the customer experience assessment and the Sitecore solution assessment, they can be coupled together as one. In fact, generally they are. So that's an even more comprehensive, almost completely comprehensive look at what you're doing for your customers vis-a-vis Sitecore in this case. And if you are interested in engaging with us, of course, if you're here today, or if you mention this webinar, we have bundled pricing for these services. And you can always contact me, and I'll show you my contact information in a moment, for a consult meeting. So we can spend a half an hour together. I can find out what's happening there. Me and my team can then digest that and make recommendations to you about what we think the best way for us to collaborate would be. But as you can imagine from what you've seen today, it would, largely be focused around things of this nature. I think now we have time for, we have time now for a few questions. So if there are any questions, I guess, Dalton, you're gonna ask them?
Sure. Excellent. Very, very informative. So let me pull this up and let's jump right into the questions. Okay, first one. Can you talk a little bit more about how we can measure the success of implementing personalization?
Yeah, I think I can field that one. So everybody who saw Meng's slide about A/B testing, I'm going to harken back to that where he was talking about your conversion rate. And what we're really trying to say there, that was fairly specific, but we want to make sure that you understand your KPIs before we get into the waters of trying to enhance those KPIs. It's not just about trying to throw things at a wall and seeing what sticks. So if you have very specific goals, or fairly specific goals, they will be much more easy to measure and justify than, well, we just want to have more conversion, or well, we have this big campaign coming up, we want it to be successful. Well, we have to know what that actually means, because this actually is all quantifiable, and we can help you with that. We can help you understand what what success looks like, design a personalization program to to meet those goals, and then measure how well we did, and of course optimize based on that. Hopefully that answers that question.
Right. Another question we have is, one of our challenges is not knowing where to start with our personalization strategy. Can you provide some insight?
How about right there? You can start by talking to me. I would love to have this conversation with you, and I can bring my friends with me, if that's okay. We would love to hear about the challenges that you're facing or the goals that you have, any and all. And there's lots of different ways that we can collaborate together. But I think the very first step is just reach out to me. You can hit me on email or give me a call, and I would love to continue the conversation. I think that's it for that one.
All right. And my website is not on Sitecore. Can I still benefit from the CX assessment?
I'm sorry, Dalton, I didn't catch the last thing that you said there. From the what?
Okay. My website is not on Sitecore. Can I still benefit from the assessment?
Oh, yeah, of course. So not the Sitecore solution assessment, of course, but the customer experience assessment, absolutely. So we're interested in, in an omni-channel sense, what you're putting in front of your customers and your prospects, and really, how your brand is interacting with the world. So it doesn't matter what platform you're on; it's platform agnostic. We want to see how how the digital assets that you're putting in front of your customers are doing, vis-a-vis best practices, vis-a-vis your goals, et cetera. What we think you ought to be, what we would suggest you ought to be doing. So yeah, the answer is, if you're not on Sitecore, the customer experience assessment is 100% for you too. So thank you for asking that. It's a great question.
All right. It looks like those are all of the questions we have today. So with that stated, if those in attendance have any additional questions or concerns, please feel free to contact us. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be making this available for on-demand viewing in the coming days on YouTube, as well as including it in a follow-up email to all of those who registered in advance, so you may share it with your colleagues. And with that, I would like to say thank you and have a great rest of your day.